Pokémon is without a doubt a system seller, and throughout the years it's been one of my main reasons to upgrade my Nintendo hardware, be it a new 3DS or even a Nintendo Switch. However, sometimes I crave for something different in my Pokémon games, and luckily there are a ton of passion projects out there that take the Pokémon formula and successfully turn it into something new and refreshing to play. Those will be my focus today. I will be looking at Pokémon-like games that have some of the following features: monsters to capture and train, turn-based combat, gyms and trainer battles, world exploration, trying to stop an evil team, and a Pokédex to complete. I think this sums up pretty well what I'm looking for in a Pokémon experience, but it doesn't mean that I'm looking for all of these features in a single game. Also, quick disclaimer before starting, I've only included games that I've actually played until the end, and with this said, enjoy the rest of the video. It might surprise you, but YoKai-Watch 1 is available on the Nintendo Switch from the Japanese eShop, and having played the original on the Nintendo 3DS, I was able to navigate through it quite comfortably, while referring to a guide once in a while to make sure I knew what I needed to do with certain quests. Unlike Pokemon, you do not have trainer battles or even gyms to beat, but you do have a ton of yokai to befriend and evolve with the goal of filling your medallion, which is more challenging than most Pokemon games. Part of the challenge is due to this mechanic called Crank-a-Kai, where daily you'll be given a certain amount of pulls from a crank machine, each costing a yokai medal. Depending on the medal, you'll be rewarded certain items or yokai. Some of these yokai are completely exclusive to the Crank-a-Kai, and when you combine their rarity, the low amount of cranks you get a day, and the frustrating ways of getting medals in-game, you get an almost impossible to complete medallion. But other than this, and the language barrier, the game is beautiful on the Nintendo Switch. I love the design of each yokai and its unique gameplay, although some of the mechanics don't translate as well from the Nintendo 3DS, which relied heavily on the use of the stylus. While the story is lighthearted and geared towards a child audience, there are some bosses that can give you quite a challenge and even frighten any child, especially Massive-Face. That guy still gives me the creeps. Throughout the years, there have been games that had the pleasure of being called the Pokémon Killer, and just like YoKai-Watch, Temtem held that title. However, by this point, it's almost impossible to kill a franchise like Pokémon, and even Temtem failed to build the momentum needed to capitalize on its early success, and it took years for Temtem to reach a point where I can fully recommend it. By now, Temtem has had several updates that added new content, fixed bugs, balanced the game, and even removed the microtransactions. As a Pokemon clone, Temtem has everything you'd expect: gym battles, catchable and breedable monsters, an evil team, a Tempedia to complete, and even something that Pokemon fans have been asking Game Freak to bring back for years: a battle frontier. Battling online is also great despite not being as popular. You do not need to spend hours breeding a perfect Temtem. You can just hop online, build your team, much like Pokemon Showdown, and you are good to go. However, there has been something stopping Temtem from reaching its full potential: the fact that it's an MMO, or MMO Lite like the developers call it, which makes a lot of areas of the game like breeding or getting money grindier than your usual Pokemon game. Nonetheless, Temtem is still one of the best games like Pokemon on the Nintendo Switch. I first played Cassette when it launched on Steam. I loved it so much that I had to purchase it again once I found out it had a release on the Nintendo Switch as well. But what makes Cassette so appealing? First, there's the art style and sprite work that bring me straight back to the Nintendo DS era of Pokemon. Had Pokemon kept its 2D style, I'd be more than happy if it was anything as endearing as Cassette. Then there's the story. Despite its looks, the story has a mature tone that Pokemon fans of my age can relate to. You wake in a world you don't know with people from different points in time who are trying to just return home, but also learn how to adapt and thrive in this new world. The world is filled with dangerous Cassette that you can capture, train, and evolve. Through your journey, you'll find great party members that will help you in battle. If your bond is strong enough, you'll be able to fuse your Cassette, which will come in handy when battling captains and, most importantly, the Angels, who are these massive bosses that share a very uncomfortable design. But the best part of Cassette is being able to explore it with other players through multiplayer. It's a lot like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, but this one is actually good since your friends can actually assist you in battle. Also, if you decide to play Cassette piece, be ready to be blasted with one of the best soundtracks in monster taming games. There are two Monster Hunter Story games on the Nintendo Switch, and I still think the first one is superior, and I'll explain why by showing how the original Monster Hunter Stories is a great game like Pokémon. First, there's the obvious, the monster taming, where you can befriend roughly 100 popular monsters spanning the entire Monster Hunter franchise up until Monster Hunter Generations. Just like you can make Pokémon feel unique by giving them unique moves, EVs and natures, you can also customize your monsters with genes from another monster. With this method, you can give new moves to your monsters and even change its typing if given enough genes of a certain type, which is a nightmare to deal with online, believe me. Gene swapping is a bit daunting at first, but you need to understand it if you want to be successful in the post-game. The content that puts these Monster Hunter Stories above Monster Hunter Stories 2, mainly the Tower of Illusion. You can think of it like the Battle Tower in Pokemon games. In the Tower of Illusions, you have 3 paths you can choose, and your goal is to reach the top of each path. However, unlike Pokemon, there are checkpoints in certain levels, meaning you don't have to start all over again. Completing this tower is very rewarding since it forces you to understand all the game's mechanics, and it's a shame that there's nothing like this in Pokemon games anymore or in Monster Hunter Stories 2. Before the number 1 spot, I want to quickly mention a few games that barely missed the cut for me. Starting with World of Final Fantasy. World of Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy's take on the monster taming genre, and it does a great job in making the combat feel unique. The monsters have an amazing design, and you can recognize most of them from previous games. However, unlike Monster Hunter Stories, you do need to have played other games in the franchise to fully enjoy it. Since the story of World of Final Fantasy leans heavily on previously established characters and references, it's harder to recommend. I've known about Coromon for years now, and I was eagerly waiting for the Nintendo Switch release. It's a great Pokemon-like game where you can capture monsters, go on an adventure, and stop a calamity from happening. And while I loved my time with the game, I never got around to finishing it. I think there were other games being launched at the time I was playing it and decided to drop it. I still want to get around to finishing one day though, because this is truly a great monster taming game and a Pokemon-like. By now, Digimon fans must be disappointed their Digimon games didn't make the cut. But the truth is, these games are very different from Pokemon games and lean heavily on something most Pokemon fans don't enjoy in recent games: cutscenes with a lot of dialogue. If you don't mind this, you'll find 2 great games with a lot of content to enjoy for more than 100 hours. The real seller for these games is the fact that any Digimon can become almost any Digimon you want, since you'll always have different Digivolution options, and you can even devolve them to try a new route. I had a great time with these games, and I can't wait to get my hands on Time Stranger in the near future. Dragon Quest Monster the Dark Prince was my biggest surprise of 2023. I wasn't completely sold on a game due to its lack of polish and performance issues, but after unlocking Monster Synthesis, I was completely hooked. I thought that Monster Hunter Stories was the strongest monster taming in terms of customization, since there's almost no limit to what you can do with a monster. Any monster can be a tank, a healer, or an attacker based on how they are built. You should use and abuse this mechanic if you want to clear all of the game's content, especially the last secret boss. But it's not just the synthesis mechanic that makes this game appealing to me. There's a decent story to follow with ties to Dragon Quest IV, which I found to have a very satisfying conclusion, despite taking a while to pick up the pace. And also expect a big world to explore with many different areas and monsters to capture. With more than 500 monsters from the Dragon Quest franchise to capture, don't expect to run out of things to do quickly. I have roughly 60 hours and I'm still missing a few spots in my collection. And to close, there's also an online ladder for those that want to put their creations to the test. However, it's very unbalanced and too heavy on RNG, and in my opinion, it's not worth your time. But the rest of the content is so great that I can recommend it 100%, since in my eyes, it's still one of the best monster taming games on the Nintendo Switch, and a game I can fully recommend to Pokemon fans. Thank you so much for watching yet another video until the end. Pokemon-like games are some of my favorite to play, and ranking these was very difficult since I thoroughly enjoyed every single game mentioned here today. Also, thank you to the absolute legends that commented, liked and subscribed on my last video. It helps a lot since I'm just getting started. If everything goes well, I'll be seeing you again next week with brand new content.